Host Julian Leahy, and today I'm joined by the fantastic Scott Murray from Texas. Scott Murray is a marketing, communication, and content consultant with 20 years of experience in content and an extensive education in communication. He helps small businesses, marketing teams, and new marketers evolve from traditional to sparketing strategies that close the gap between content and humans. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you so much for having me, Julian. It's good to be with you.
You know what? Content is so important, and I think that it's one of those things where, as a content producer, you spend a lot of time thinking, "Am I doing this right? Like, what am I doing?" And what is the gap between content and humans that you talk about, Scott?
Well, the simplest way to put it, as it relates to probably the most prevalent problem, is the inability for marketing to evolve with the times. Especially if you've been in marketing for more than 20 years, because if you had any experience in marketing when there was a thriving environment of captive audiences through traditional media where you could just be in front of them and pitch a sales pitch, or say buy this or you want this, you had a heyday. But then when the internet changed everything, and then suddenly the audience was more in control than the marketing or the companies, then going into Facebook and trying to force traditional marketing messaging in social media and online, when people can just tune you out and they want more than just a sales pitch, it's been a challenge for a lot of companies and marketers, because you couple that too with the fact that when you get into a marketing mindset, everybody kind of has the same idea of how something should be written because we've seen it for so many years as consumers. But then we forget we've been consumers and realize that when we get online, we block that stuff out. So we've got to do a better job now of remembering when we're consumers what we want when we're online, when we're looking for something. And it's usually not telling us what to do, like buy or click, or selling us something. We want proof that there's going to be value and people are going to give us what we need. And marketers have to make that evolution of being able to message that properly.
Yes, I almost see it as like it's this move towards value-led marketing, and like you said, where we used to feel like we would put something out and it was like, here's the link, you got to click on the link, and these days, the really good marketers, you actually don't often know what they're selling. You are attracted to, I guess, the content and the value. Tell us what people are doing wrong. What don't they get about this, and why do they come and get your help?
Well, a lot of times it's usually a couple of things. Recently I worked with a company that knew they needed to change. In this case, it was their social media. They needed to promote some things, and they had some campaigns and videos they wanted to share with people on them. So, we're already taking a good step by having human people on a video we're going to share. But then the copy also had to sound like that, what you're about to watch is going to make a connection with you. And when they were copying and pasting, content from the website that was very written, or that was written in a very corporate or marketing way, you may not even look at that video. So they were saying, we know this needs to sound human. So how can we take this and turn it into something that sounds more human, where someone's going to be a little more drawn to it and not feel like they're going to get some commercial in this video. So I went in and gave them a few examples, and really it was just highlighting some of the stories that were already being told in this video, and then highlighting why that's important to people that might want to watch this in the first place, and write it as if we're telling a story, because that's what they're going to get out of this video. And when they saw that, they're like, okay, we got it. We've got what this, how this works. So really the challenge today is just being able to figure out that evolution of being able to take what you've been doing for so long and figure out what's going to resonate. And granted, that might take some experimentation. That might take some trying some things out over time to see if it works. And then once you figure out what works, you really are able to build it from there. But you've got to really be talking in something that is at least showing somebody up front that you're providing them with something of value, because there is so much out there that is saying click, buy, and we've also had clickbait, right, Julian? We have clickbait. We have other things that sometimes show us it might be a value, and then we click on it and it's clear that we got trapped and it was just to get our click, or it was just to provide, value to them, and we bail. And all those experiences over time make a lot of us as consumers really unsure about what we're going to get at any point. So our defenses are up. And by being able to evolve your messaging into something that sounds a lot more human, you're going to have a much better chance of breaking some of those barriers of people already thinking you don't have their best interest in mind, because they've fallen for that before. Or as they said in Beverly Hills Cop, they've fallen for the banana up the tailpipe before. They're not falling for it again.
Beverly Hills Cop reference. I just gave one of those to my wife yesterday. I said,
"Oh yeah,
something about we were having some smart people over, and we were thinking, do we need to put on a smart movie? And I said, no, let's just put on something like Beverly Hills Cop that everyone can enjoy." That was strange. Now this the corporate people. I was working with a corporate company, and they have a kind of almost a disadvantage in some ways, where their way of doing things is very unhuman, and it's rigid, and it's got to be approved by everybody. And I often think sometimes the solopreneur has sometimes got a little bit of an advantage in this new world, because you can compete against these people and you get this immediate feedback as to whether it's working or it's not, and you get to make your decision. So you will starve as a solo person if you are not having a message that is resounding. The corporate people, they get a few goes at it, and often they will get it right. But you talked about stories, focusing on stories, and so just say we've got a business that is putting stuff out there that is very corporate. It's not really hitting. What, other than stories, what's the whole kind of sequence of content that you would build around, like a strategy for that type of entity?
Well, there's a lot there. A lot of it really has to start with getting to know your audience, and knowing exactly what they're looking for, and knowing what they want, and being willing to just give that to them. Sometimes that means we don't follow some of the traditional marketing ways of doing things. Maybe we don't make it gated content, is one example. Or maybe we don't offer it to them with something that looks like a sales pitch along with it. I mean, we have to know exactly what they want and how to provide that to them in a way that's valuable, a way that builds trust and a relationship over time. And maybe that's providing a lot of insights and value over time, because they may not right at that moment be looking to buy anyway. Oftentimes they're not. But put yourself in a position where you're like, hey, look, we're not going to be in your face just constantly trying to benefit us. We are really here to benefit you. And when you can develop messaging like that, that's going to go a long way. But you really have to know what they want. And sometimes brands get into problems where they think they know what the audience needs to see or hear, and when they message that way, it doesn't resonate. I mean, I've seen even other brands who've talked about how they've changed their messaging. They've talked about how we spent a lot of time thinking this is what they needed, and we need to explain to them why they needed it, and it didn't work. In fact, I just got done looking at Guy Kawasaki's book from 2011 about enchantment. And he told a story about how when they were trying to sell those old Mac computers back in the day, that they were having a hard time selling it to the businesses, because that's how they were messaging it. They were basically telling them, you need this and here's why, and it just wasn't resonating. So you really need to know what your audience wants and be able to find ways to build content around providing that value. And anymore, it has to be more than just text. You have to find ways to, connect with people who are willing to read, connect with people who are willing to listen to something, watch something, or make it skimmable in case there's a moment where they're not able to read an entire blog or read an entire post. And that's why on top of everything else, it has to be also very, very clear and concise as to what you're offering them, because you may only have a small bit of time to be able to tell them that you're what they need.
Yes, and I spoke to a fantastic lady called Mary Henderson just earlier, and a lot of what you're saying resonates with what she was saying. And she was saying, know what your audience wants, know what the problems are, and base your whole approach on solving that problem.
Yeah. And you were talking before about an edge when you have a corporate entity that might still be relying on traditional marketing or traditional copy, things like that. That is really, to me, where any type of company can gain an edge today. I'm beginning to see more and more reports that some of those traditional SEO strategies where everybody was obsessing over SEO and ranking and things like that, that's beginning to have a little less impact. And part of it's because there's just so much more to compete with now, along with the fact that Google's not only interested in just your company, really, they're not interested in your company. They're interested in when those people get there, whether they stay and have a good experience. So if you're a company that just looks at their SEO and their rankings and they say, gosh, it's gonna just beat us down to try to get to here, go ahead and check a website. What is it? One of those analyzers, website analyzers like SEMrush, and look at your competition, look at how well they're doing, or just visit their site. And if you see that on social media and in certain content places, they're not writing things that resonate with anybody, or they're constantly automating their social media, they're not having any conversations, they're not doing anything that is needed today, there's your opportunity. And you're probably going to be able to make a quicker and bigger impact than killing yourself trying to outrank them on SEO.
Absolutely. The SEO one is huge because, for a long time, we used to just put out so much content, and like you say, out into Google, but without really tailoring it down and being clear with the overall message. And then it just becomes, another blog that you go on. And there is this little tweak to it where you still need to be producing all that content, but you need to have like this kind of global theme to what you're doing, and clarity, like you mentioned, clarity, so that we straight away know what this is all about. And then there's consistency across the channels, so you see them on social media, and it's the same general problem that they're talking about, and the audience just knows, okay, this is where I want to be, I want to follow these people, and that's how you build the following.
Yeah, I remember my first social media job. There was a big emphasis on link building and SEO and doing everything we possibly could. It was kind of a time where it almost seemed like quantity was more important than quality, and that's not true anymore. It's harder to game the system if that's the way the company is being run. Not only because Google's just not going to, fall for the banana at the tailpipe either, but it's also because consumers, as we were talking before, have also become really, really savvy. They know when the content is for them and when it's actually for you. Just did a video recently on how content can look selfish, and that's an immediate turnoff to the consumer, because we've seen enough of this now as people who look for things on the internet. We can land on a blog that we think might be able to provide us something, but what do we see right out of the gate? We see the company linking to themselves in the first paragraph, then it's already obvious why this is being written. Or secondly, we can tell that this keyword is just all over the place, almost forced in every other paragraph. And then we know this isn't written to provide me value. This is a company that's writing this for means that have no value to me at all. And if people see that in the first few seconds, it's done. And what's amazing is Google is able now to consider that to be the experience when they land on the page. And that's also telling them just how valuable you are and trustworthy you are as a resource. And if you're not doing it, that's where the opportunity for the other people to come in, provide better experiences, and they're going to be the company that everybody goes to for not only insight and value, but probably sales.
Yeah, it's the engagement metrics, and like you said, on the websites, the blogs, it's are people bouncing, or are they finding value in clicking around and looking at stuff? So you might want to have some video on there, and not just food for Google, the Google search engine. That used to work great, but it doesn't work anymore. Do you want to give us an example, kind of like a mini case study, if you can? Sorry to put you on the spot, of somebody that was able to kind of transform their approach a little bit and got better results from it.
Well, I can give you off the top of my head, the first thing that comes to mind is somebody who turned their social media around. I remember taking some social media certification courses a few years ago through Coursera, and these were provided by Northwestern University, and they have a very good media department there. And they showed a case study about, of all places, Taco Bell. And think about this for a minute. So Taco Bell, I mean, it's not like they got to roll out and tell everybody, "Hey, we're a fast food restaurant with this lineup of tacos and things." A lot of people already know who they are, but it didn't matter. It really didn't matter because they went on social media, like a lot of companies, when social media started to become something that companies and marketers got interested in. And they said that when they first came out, they were basically taking their commercials and putting them on social media, and they were lagging behind Burger King and McDonald's and all these other places. And finally, it occurred to them, you're like, we're kind of wasting our time and resources here. But here's the other thing: there's all these college kids that post selfies and other things about how they love Taco Bell, how they're going to Taco Bell, how they want Taco Bell right now. Let's wipe this clean and start engaging with them as part of our strategy. And once they transformed it that way and started having conversations and engagements, they shot through the roof. I mean, in an amazing fashion, almost where they became like the standard at that point in time for social media success. And the other thing they proved is if you can have success doing this sort of thing, then you're almost unlocking another powerful force in modern marketing, which is your fans becoming advocates. In their case, it was almost like these kids were the accelerants of their marketing, because when they started engaging with them, their followings went up, their engagements went up, everything they want exploded, because now we're not just telling you constantly, come eat tacos and look at this and put our commercials here. They were having conversations. And I will tell you that Andy Crestodina and Orbit Media did a study with Question Pro not that long ago, where they found out why people follow on social media, and they pointed out what marketers think and what consumers say. And marketers have thought that social media, in this case, the way Taco Bell started, they said they view it as a one-way conversation. They think the reason why they're being followed on social media is because people love their content and they just want to see it every day. But the consumer says, no, that's not why. That's not why we follow them. We want a conversation. We want two-way conversations. We want relationship. We want them talking to us, asking us questions, building that over time. And I will tell you one other thing that kind of backs this up. I'm finishing a master's degree in professional communications. It's a master's in interdisciplinary study focused on professional communications. And I had to take this course called Applied Communication Theory. And there was a study between that and another course on social media where they decided to look at how people respond to big brands on social media, what triggers a good response and what triggers nothing. And they found that even with the big brands like Nike on Facebook and Twitter, that anytime the post said anything like buy this, click this, or told them what to do, their engagement was terrible. Whereas if they were just providing value, their engagement was much better.
Yeah, a bit of a shift in thinking, isn't it? I often have to fight that urge, and I find the best stuff I put out is where there's no picture of anything. It's just the content stands on its own. What do people need to do? What's the first step if people want to get some help with their content strategy? How do you help them? Do you have a strategy call or anything like that?
You mean just direct, like reach out communication? You mean like email or something?
Yeah, like I mean, do you work with these people and help them transform their content? Is that what you do?
Yeah, I generally, I mean, it varies. Some people, you have a conversation with someone. Sometimes a consultation can be as simple as, here's our audience, here's what we're doing, here's what we want, and here's our challenge. Sometimes a consultation can literally be as easy as kind of asking some questions, talking some things through, and they go try it out and they may take off, and that's all they really needed. Other folks might need me to be a little more involved. Maybe we build some things out that they can build upon, or we're taking what's already existing and evolving it and then building from there, or at least giving them a starting point, because there's not any aspect of this where I come in and it's, within a day we figure it all out and everything's great the next day. But everybody feels a lot better about what they're doing to achieve the goals that we're talking about. And that as far as how much is involved, that varies from company to company, but it always starts with learning about the business. And I'm a people person, and I think that's been a big part of my success over the years. Is my people focus isn't just on the audience of a particular client; it's also on the client. I really have a genuine interest in helping these companies do this because I know it's a challenge. So really the focus on people, focusing on their challenges, their specific business, what they're trying to do, and giving them the best guidance I can as far as they need it to go.
And you've got a podcast as well. That's be a good way for people to tune in and have a look at what you're doing. Is it called the Sparketer podcast?
That's the subtitle for it, but the main title is Get the Message, because it's all about not only your audience getting the message, but we have to understand the message too, and what we're presenting to our audience as well. So it covers both sides of the two-way conversation we've been talking about. So every other week I talk to people that cover different aspects of making these types of connections through content, and then in between those weeks I pull some resources from people online. Usually it's LinkedIn posts or a blog that I think provides some insight that can help people, and it's usually 4 different topics, and it just adds a little value to the podcast feed where they can get kind of a small podcast in between that just give them might be 2 or 3 things that provide some inspiration for the day, ideas for the day, something to think about, and that's been really, really helpful to people too.
Yeah, awesome. You go through some content and break it down, and that's a good little value nugget. So check that out. The Sparketer podcast. If you Google that, you should be able to find it. I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for coming on, Scott. Some great info there, and a lot of people out there, I know, they're just producing content and they need a little bit of help and guidance, and you've really kind of specified in that area. So some good info there for people. Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome, Julian. Thank you so much for having the conversation with me today.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for listening and watching. And I'll see you very soon on another episode of When It Worked. Bye.